In 1935, retired Marine Major General Smedley Butler wrote an insider's assessment of the war machine of the time titled War is a Racket, a scathing critique of war profiteering in the United States. I suspect that as long as there's been war, there have been those seeking to profit from it, so this is nothing new. Free PDF copies of this book are all over the internet, and I highly recommend giving it a read. I'm just going to present a section from Chapter 1 to set the scene for the rest of my presentation. War is a racket. It always has been. It is possibly the oldest, easily the most profitable, surely the most vicious. It is the only one international in scope. It is the only one in which the profits are reckoned in dollars and the losses in lives. A racket is best described, I believe, as something that is not what it seems to be to the majority of the people. Only a small inside group knows what it is about. It is conducted for the benefit of the very few, at the expense of the very many. Out of war, a few people make huge fortunes. In the World War, a mere handful garnered the profits of the conflict. At least 21,000 new millionaires and billionaires were made in the United States during the World War. That many admitted their huge blood gains in their income tax returns. How many other war millionaires falsified their tax returns, no one knows. How many of these war millionaires shouldered a rifle? How many of them dug a trench? How many of them knew what it meant to go hungry in a rat-infested dugout? How many of them spent sleepless, frightened nights ducking shells and shrapnel and machine gun bullets? How many of them parried a bayonet thrust of an enemy? How many of them were wounded or killed in battle? Out of war, nations acquire additional territory, if they are victorious. They just take it. This newly acquired territory promptly is exploited by the few, the selfsame few who wrung dollars out of blood in the war. The general public shoulders the bill. And what is this bill? This bill renders a horrible accounting. Newly placed gravestones, mangled bodies, shattered minds, broken hearts and homes, economic instability, depression, and all its attendant miseries, backbreaking taxation for generations and generations. For a great many years as a soldier, I had a suspicion that war was a racket. Not until I retired to civil life did I fully realize it. Now that I see the international war clouds gathering, as they are today, I must face it and speak out. That was General Butler's assessment of war profiteering in 1935. Not much has changed from then to now. Here's the basic recipe. You create a need for a war. Then you gin up panic in the people to support the war. Tell all kinds of amazing stories. In World War I, it was babies on bayonets thrown up at the German army. Then you fight the war. And the longer you fight the war, the better. Winning isn't really important for this. It's profits. Then you rake in the bucks. I suspect if people are willing to profit from war, they don't really care what it costs others. In the aftermath of 9/11, in the toxic environment around what was formerly the Twin Towers, cleanup efforts went apace. And the people working on them were assured by government officials that the air was safe to breathe. In the years following that, the truth has come out that the air, in fact, was not safe to breathe. First responders are now dead today because they were poisoned by the environment that they were working in. They developed autoimmune disorders, lung diseases, a plethora of different cancers, and all of them were denied the help they needed by the very same government that assured them that the environment that they were working in was safe. In military theaters of operation throughout Afghanistan and Iraq during the Gulf War years, burn pits were established to get rid of the waste generated by the large-scale military operations ongoing. let me describe these technical marvels for you. To make a burn pit, you dig a hole. I mean a big hole. A really big hole, like heavy earth-moving equipment big. Got that? Good. Now, dump a bunch of stuff you wouldn't want to deal with in it, like, say, old batteries, medical waste, plastics, weapons and ammunitions, vehicle parts, rubber, chemicals, oil and gas, electronics, human and animal waste, medical waste, you get the picture. All the stuff you would be ticketed or arrested for if you tried to pull it off in America. Now, dump a bunch of jet fuel on it and set it on fire. Run this operation around the clock for years, burning up to hundreds of tons of waste a day. That is a burn pit. Now, for security reasons, these pits were located on military bases, and the smoke they generated got on everything and everyone, and they couldn't avoid not breathing it around the clock. In 2006, a memorandum was generated detailing the conditions at Joint Base Balad in Iraq by Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Darren Curtis, and he had a couple of notable conclusions. One, money seemed to be the issue as to why engineering controls were not in place, i.e., enclosed incinerators with exhaust filtration, not open pits. And item 2, in his professional opinion, there was an acute health hazard for individuals and a possibility for chronic health hazards associated with the smoke. Officials knew the burn pits were a problem by at least 2006. Thousands of veterans sought medical help from the Veterans Administration. Many were accused by the bureaucrats of everything from hypochondria to gaming the system, fraud, so they could get benefits. No one was taken seriously. Many of the veterans took their own lives in frustration. Many more died broken and abandoned by the country they had sworn an oath to protect. The federal government sets out guidelines regarding particulate matter in the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, or NAAQS. Particles of 2.5 microns or less can become embedded deep in the lungs, and exposure to excessive particulate matter is linked to a variety of potential health effects. Aside from what the air particles were, the size is also a characteristic of the health effects it causes. One of the categories is 2.5 microns or less. This is called PM 2.5. Now, the significance of a particle that small is that it can get in the tiniest crevices of your lungs and fester there for a very long time, causing a myriad of health problems in your lungs and getting into your system. Health effects reported by veterans included asthma, autoimmune disorders, bladder cancer, COPD, Hodgkin's disease, lung cancer, Parkinson's disease, and many others. You get the idea. After 2009, regulations restricted what could be incinerated in a burn pit, and enclosed incinerators have been brought in to some locations, but the damage has already been done. Tens of thousands of veterans have reported adverse health effects from exposure to toxins generated at these sites and suffer to this day. Never mind the uncounted civilian populations that lived near where those pits were operated. I saw no mention of them in official reports. Survivors and activists often refer to this as the new Agent Orange. And generations after the health effects of Agent Orange are officially swept under the rug, Vietnam veterans are still dying prematurely from its effects. Support of the troops is a popular sentiment, but supporting the troops is more than waving flags at a parade and competing to cheer loudest after the national anthem is played at a ball game. I say support them by holding politicians accountable for how their lives are spent. Make damn sure they are taken care of after they've served. There is seemingly no limit on what will be spent for a shiny new toy for the military-industrial complex. But every penny to be spent caring for those who served is jealously guarded. Private groups are doing what they can to help, but they rely on donations and volunteers. Reach out and help them. Don't wait for the government to do it for you. You can't force the state to act. The bureaucracy will protect itself behind a wall of procedure and regulations. But you can do what you can do. There are two groups that I'm aware of that help the veterans who have been affected by the burn pits. One is burnpits360.org, and the other is the Hunter 7 Foundation. They have a presence on Facebook. I encourage you to reach out to them and offer what support you can. Until next time, this is William, signing off.